We're here at the Brandywine Workshop and Archive, an organization in Philadelphia that I've had some interaction with since the early 1990s when they invited me to come and do a print. For almost 45 years, Alan Edmonds, who runs Brandywine, has been inviting high-quality artists in a very diverse character to come to Philadelphia and to make prints.
But the small, glorious show that Frank Hyder has on display at the Brandywine Workshop is not of his prints. Rather, it is almost a miniature retrospective of 5 works created since the 1980s that demonstrate the breadth of his artistic and humanitarian concerns.
This room has 4 pieces that represent 4 decades of my ideas. The head-to-toe piece was in my very first New York show. It reflects my interest in mixed media going back to as far as 1986. I was reading Newsweek or Time magazine, and there was this article about people who were being killed in Africa. There was this phrase that the dead were being piled up head to toe, and I just took that phrase as a starting point. And I hired a model and I had him lay on a table, and I did this drawing of the head, and then I did a drawing of his feet. I transferred it on this big piece of wood, and I started drawing into it and then carving into it, which was something I had started doing about 1980.
I have always loved this painting of Frank's. It is daring both from a compositional as well as a technical point of view and demonstrates a profound humanity. Frank spent the year 2000 living in the rainforest of Venezuela. He told me the humidity and rain inspired him. He coats many of his pieces with a clear acrylic resin to capture the wetness of the air he remembers so well. He also told me that this resin is a metaphor for tears.
During the episode with Trayvon Martin, I live now in Miami, and at that time I was living most of the year in Miami. I saw the news reports. It just seemed to me that all the parts that were being reported were only pieces of the truth, and the truth was that somebody got killed because somebody else wanted to have a gun and wanted to play policeman. Something was not right for me. I made this Trayvon piece. I wanted to make a testimony, a tribute to the human being. I selected a method of working that I pioneered in my own work in the 1990s. This carve away and reattach technique of reapplication of waste cuts and then painting back into it. Painting first, then reattach, then paint again. I sort of cut it out in an irregular shape to represent the controversial hood that he was wearing. I was doing a lot of experimentation with printing cheap clays on transparent material. So what I would do is make a painting and then create a JPEG that we would send to a printer who would print it in a high resolution on a piece of glassine tracing paper. Then I took these giclée prints, scaled them down, and began pasting them on and then creating the landscape around it. So the piece could be mounted on a wall as it is here, or it could be mounted on glass and the light will go through it. And it represented one of my interests now, ever since my year living in the rainforest, is light going through color.
In this powerful image, Frank shows his abiding respect for the indigenous people of the rainforest, trying to hold on to their way of life, now deeply threatened, of living in balance with nature. Frank has been making painted, inflatable sculptures since 2008, and it was pictures of one of them that induced Alan Edmonds to give Frank this show. This piece is called Sentinel, and once was exhibited in Miami in an outdoor show called Giants in the City. The inside one is called Janice.
I found a little company in Miami who made a lot of advertisement balloons. I asked the designers if they thought they could put the face on two sides. As soon as I saw it, I realized that I was creating a Janus image, which comes from the Romans, which was their two-headed god who could see forward and backwards, who could see what was going to happen and what had happened.
Frank wanted one side to be black and the other side orange to represent the racial diversity and shared human condition of us all. He spelled Janus with an I instead of a U to reference a more expansive sense of gender identity. And he took a trip from Istanbul to St. Petersburg, photographing this wondrous and highly portable being in all sorts of unexpected places.
The piece is completely self-contained. When it collapses, it folds in on itself, and the base folds on two sides. It makes like a little carry bag that looks a little bit like a sport bag or a golf bag.
These inflatables are painted with acrylic paint and blown up and collapsed numerous times. I asked him what keeps the paint from flaking off.
When these are folded up and they're in compressed spaces and it's hot, acrylic paint can stick together. Anybody who's an artist knows you get a painting that sticks to the other painting. So I came up with an idea the first time I painted one of these, and I went to the hardware store and I bought cans of Lemon Pledge and I put it on the acrylic paint. The idea was to create a wax barrier between the paint when it touched face to face. And somehow or another, it's actually prolonged the life of the acrylic paint. It must seal it and give it a little bit more flexibility. So this thing is inflated and deflated 90 straight days, twice a day, and the paint still sticks. So it's just a little something I discovered.
Though the objects in this show have a great variety, they feel very related to one another. I asked Frank to comment on the connections.
There's a single theme in my mind about the human condition, the fact that we are all in danger on this planet, whether it's from external forces or internal forces, ourselves, our neighbors. We endanger ourselves by our tolerance for intolerance. I travel a lot and I see a lot of things. And one of the things that I feel very deeply is that if we could just figure out ways to work together, look for solutions to our problems instead of just assuming that the old ways are the only ways. That's all I can do. I'm just an artist. I just offer my point of view. And if no one cares to listen, at least I got it out for myself.